Urgent! Russia faces an amphibious threat in Kherson. The Ukrainian armed forces are destroying the enemy as they approach. The Kremlin is in panic. The offensive has stalled. The front will not fall. Meat grinder assaults for the sake of a few kilometers. The Russian Federation's army is drowning itself in blood. A railway hell for the occupiers. The Ukrainian armed forces strike at the heart of the enemy. Watch all the explosive details from the front right now. While the world holds its breath, awaiting a diplomatic breakthrough, the Kremlin is betting not on negotiations, but on continuing the bloodshed. The Russian dictator Putin is not planning to make concessions to either Washington or Kyiv, even under the threat of new sanctions. He believes in a swift victory and is doing everything to prolong the war. The illusion of an imminent triumph is also fueled by the fairy tales the Russian general staff feeds to the man in the bunker. Yet another prediction claims that the Ukrainian front will supposedly collapse within 2 or 3 months. In Moscow, they believe that now is not the time to retreat, saying that neither the army nor society would understand such a move.
According to 3 sources familiar with discussions in the Kremlin, Putin's determination to keep going is driven by his belief in Russia's victory and his skepticism that the latest US sanctions will have any significant impact after successive waves of economic sanctions over 3.5 years of war. The Russian leader does not want to alienate Trump and understands that he may be missing a chance to improve relations with Washington and the West. But his military objectives are more important, 2 sources said, according to Reuters.
Putin is not only unafraid of sanctions, he simply no longer believes in them. 3.5 years of restrictions have failed to break the Russian economy, which means, in his eyes, the West has nothing fundamentally new to offer. The old man's dream still remains the complete capture of Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions, and only then, supposedly, to talk about a peace agreement.
But the front will not fall. There may be setbacks, there may be losses of individual settlements, but the front definitely will not collapse. What is happening now on the front lines, of course, gives the Russian command more confidence and encouragement about the idea that combat operations are going successfully. Well, to some extent. Is Ukraine retreating? Yes, definitely. Does the Russian Federation have successes? Of course, without a doubt. Should they stop? No, why would they? So what's the logic here? To keep advancing for as long as A, the situation at the front allows, meaning as long as there are people, equipment, support, and as long as there isn't a lack of support or equipment for the people. So that's the first point. And the second is, as long as the economy allows. That is, the Russian Federation's economy really is creaking and cracking. There are layoffs, there are cutbacks, there is budget redistribution. So, until these 2 curves intersect at a single point, a shortage of people, equipment, ammunition, and the economic situation at the front, until all of that comes together into one big pile, the Russian Federation will continue to advance. Yes, gnawing off 100 or 200 meters a day, but that's the logic.
While the bunker dweller thinks everything is going according to plan, Ukrainian saboteurs have infiltrated enemy airfield territory and planted explosives on a Mi-8. Looks like someone's in for a fiery flight. Meanwhile, on the front line, Russia is advancing slowly at the cost of meat grinder assaults and colossal losses. The main offensive is currently in the Donetsk direction, particularly targeting the city of Pokrovsk, a strategically important logistics hub. And although capturing the city of Rodinske and the surrounding villages may increase pressure on Ukrainian defenses, it's not possible to speak of a full breakthrough.
The occupiers are attempting to organize an operational encirclement of the Ukrainian defense forces by flanking maneuvers near Mirnohrad and, accordingly, on the other flank at Novoekonomikny. At one point, the occupying forces managed to drive a wedge into the positions of the Ukrainian defense forces along the Pokrovsk-Kostiantynivka highway near the Malinivska interchange. Subsequently, the Russians expanded their area of presence and are advancing toward Mirnohrad. The main objective of the Russian occupying forces is to establish control over the logistics of the Ukrainian defense forces, particularly the only road by which the defense forces rotate personnel, evacuate the wounded, and deliver ammunition. This is the road near the settlement of Rodinske.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian fighters and units of the Star 4 of the 14th Operational Brigade of the National Guard of Ukraine are striking the enemy at the mine east of Rodinske. Interestingly, according to the 7th Corps of the Ukrainian Air Assault Forces, Russia has set the objective of reaching the southern outskirts of Pokrovsk by September 1st. Ambitious. Leaflets are being dropped towards the occupiers, urging local residents to surrender the positions of the defense forces. Apparently, apart from manipulating and intimidating the locals, the invaders no longer know how to move forward. As for the Sumy direction, the defense forces managed to stabilize the situation there thanks to a series of counterattacks and to seize the tactical initiative. Right now, what's gaining momentum there is the so-called railway war.
What did Ukraine decide to do? Ukraine decided to target logistics, specifically the railways, because hitting military targets is much harder, because they're all well protected. It's hard to get to them. The success rate keeps fluctuating. I mean, the rate of successful hits, and the railway is long. There are many different junctions, components, hubs, and you can't cover them all with air defense. So Ukraine is trying to influence Russian logistics this way, not just military, but also civilian. They're hitting all sorts of distribution cabinets, traction substations, things like that. Basically everything that controls train movement. We know that if a train stops, there's a second, a third, a fourth, a fifth one behind it. And it's not just, I don't know, a diesel locomotive or something. There could be 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 freight cars behind it, and they can be stuck there for several hours or even several days. And in this way, movement by this mode of transport is paralyzed, blocked.
The Kremlin has trapped itself. According to the Institute for the Study of War, Russia has deliberately created a wartime society through repression, propaganda, and making the economy dependent on the defense industry. Any pause now is not just a sign of political weakness, it's a blow to internal stability.
Russian state independent polls conducted at the beginning of 2025 showed that the majority of Russians support continuing the war in Ukraine. And the Kremlin is likely using these sentiments, which it actively stirs up, to justify Putin's decision to continue the war. Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War.
In the 4 years since the large-scale invasion, the Russian occupation army's main advantage, the Russian Federation's means of destruction, has been its overwhelming superiority in the air and in manpower. And as we can see, not even the intermediate stages of the special military operation have been achieved. Moreover, in certain areas, the Ukrainian defense forces have seized the tactical initiative. We are talking about the successful actions of the Ukrainian defense forces in the Kharkiv and Sumy regions, which have undermined the political statements of the Russian dictator regarding the creation of the so-called buffer zone, and accordingly, the plans of the general staff of the occupying country's army to expand the theater of military operations at the expense of other regions of Ukraine, not included in the Russian Federation by the decree of the Russian dictator dated September 30th, 2022.
While the West searches for leverage and the White House sends special envoys for negotiations, Putin is betting on a protracted war. But there is one variable in this scenario: time. And contrary to the Kremlin's confidence, time is not on Russia's side, because every month of war depletes not only Ukraine, but also the resources of the empire itself. Its collapse may be closer than it seems from the bunker.
Shock! Russia has been left without airplanes. Even Ethiopia gave a firm no to leasing airliners. A complete collapse of the Kremlin's plans. Sanctions are playing a cruel joke. The airplane crisis in Russia isn't stopping. Oh, what happened? What about import substitution? Turns out it doesn't help.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
A new embarrassment for Putin. The Russian authorities asked to lease planes from Ethiopia, but they were refused.
I proceed from the assumption that we will keep flying.
Russia is under United States sanctions, and Ethiopian Airlines has strong operational and commercial ties with the US. We operate in accordance with international law and are not prepared to violate it. Ethiopian Airlines is currently expanding its operations and also needs additional aircraft.
Air service with Ethiopia was established by Russia in 2018, but the share of flights is small, and the resources of Ethiopian Airlines are definitely insufficient to solve the problems in Russian aviation.
This particular airline holds significant importance for fostering robust trade relations, promoting vibrant tourism, and facilitating various other essential activities that African countries actively engage in and conduct with the Russian Federation. Especially now when Russia is working extensively on relations between Russia and Africa.
Russia has already tried to make similar deals with Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Qatar, and Kuwait, but nothing came of it. At the same time, people are still being told that everything is fine and that hundreds of domestically produced aircraft will appear any day now.
And we plan to produce well over 1,000 aircraft by the year 2030, specifically our very own domestic planes manufactured right here at home.
At the moment, one of the main priorities, of course, is the production of civil aircraft. This is our top priority. Speaking of the MF-21, more than 70 systems and components have already been produced domestically as part of our import substitution efforts. In August, a fully import-substituted aircraft will take flight. I was just at the factory in Irkutsk. There, 14 fuselages are almost ready and standing by, and another 9 are in the final stages of completion. As for the Superjet, our Superjet is also now fully import substituted.
But the number of accidents due to the lack of imported parts is only increasing, and more of them are fatal. Last year, the number of incidents rose by 30% compared to the previous year, but the Russian authorities are trying to hide the statistics.
Today, a Ufa-Omsk flight sent out a distress signal. The aircraft caught fire during the one that had departed from Magadan the day before could have ended dramatically. And people are concerned about whether it's safe.
There were 670 reported incidents in 2023.
But at the same time, they immediately clarify and say, but that's 1.3% less than
The previous year.
When I read things like this, what does it even mean? 1.3% less? And what about last year? How was it then? Was that normal?
Yes.
Well, these failures have become more serious. I mean, if before, say, an engine failure was just one of those things and not uncommon, now it happens very often. In such a short period of time, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. This is official statistics, about 2,000 overdue spare parts. So, if a part is supposed to be replaced, say after 1,000 hours, but they change it after 1,200 or 1,300 to save money, then
That's already unsafe.
that's already unsafe.
For example, take the recent incident with the crash of a 60-year-old AN-24. For many months before that, passengers had been filming videos and writing to the airline about malfunctions during flights. 48 people died.
Russian Ministry of Emergency Situations rescuers arrived at the crash site. According to preliminary inspection, there are no survivors at the crash site.
Let me emphasize, it is important not to allow excessive increases in ticket prices while unconditionally ensuring the quality of passenger service and flight safety. These issues should be a priority for both carriers and the Ministry of Transport, as well as other relevant agencies.
But the situation is not improving, and Russian lawmakers are dealing with more serious matters.
Dear Vyacheslav Viktorovich, here is the magazine of a major Russian airline, where our citizens, the passengers, are being offered French, Italian, and Spanish wines. The same situation exists in other airlines. In other words, we are essentially promoting wine products from countries that are unfriendly to us, while they, in turn, supply weapons to Kyiv.
And those responsible for technology in Russia are whining that they have been left alone with their problems.
Probably there isn't a single country in the world that fully 100% produces all the components for its own airplanes. For comparison, both Boeing and Airbus have about 9 such global suppliers, major companies around the world that provide components for their aircraft. But we are forced to do everything ourselves on our own.
When was there ever such a country? The Soviet Union.
Exactly. That's how it was in Soviet Union.
They just forget to add that they have to twist and turn, lie, and put their own citizens at risk of death every single day, all just because one bloodthirsty old man wanted some action instead of retiring.
The killer rocket is ready. Ukrainian engineers have shocked the world with a powerful weapon. The Kremlin is in a panic. A new ballistic missile capable of wiping the Kremlin off the face of the earth. Putin trembles before the Ukrainian missile of retribution.
At a time when Russian aggression does not cease, Ukrainian long-range weaponry is becoming not only a symbol of strength, but also a real guarantee of security.
Our missile program is showing good progress. And although this is a difficult task, we are gradually getting closer to being able to use our own missiles rather than relying solely on supplies from our partners.
In 2025, there was a breakthrough in the production of Ukrainian missiles. The greatest anticipation was focused on the production of a domestic ballistic missile. And now, it has happened.
I believe that the curators made the right choice, both in separating the program from other initiatives and in ensuring that each missile system and missile type has its own curator and manager. This is a positive development. As far as I know, in mid-May, tests were conducted that are considered extremely successful. The missile covered almost 300 kilometers and destroyed a Russian command post. And it is very important that this was a combat use.
A Ukrainian-made ballistic missile traveled nearly 300 kilometers and destroyed a Russian command post.
The warhead of this missile weighs over 400 kilograms, and that's a very powerful arsenal. For comparison, the new American ballistic missile has a warhead of only 91 kilograms. It's clear that this will be a powerful weapon for us. I hope that we will continue to move forward.
President Volodymyr Zelensky has repeatedly stated that the Ukrainian ballistic missile is already on its way.
I have specifically instructed that separate and dedicated funding be allocated to our crucial Ukrainian ballistic missile program in order to significantly accelerate the production of these vital missiles.
One of the versions currently circulating claims that the armed forces of Ukraine have already been attacking enemy targets with ballistic missiles for a year. After all, many experts and analysts have, from time to time, been unable to identify the weapon used to destroy enemy targets.
The very first time successful results were officially announced was by the president himself, I think, sometime in July or perhaps August of last year. And since that particular time, there have been several notable instances when strikes on Russia, it seems quite clear. There is significant speculation that Ukrainian ballistic missiles were indeed involved in these specific strikes on Russia.
A domestically produced ballistic missile is truly a breakthrough for the Ukrainian defense industrial complex.
Ukraine had been developing such projects even before the war began. And some of these projects were already at an almost ready stage, that is, at the prototype level, ready to be adopted into service. Ukraine needs to develop its own missile program, and in this missile program, this has essentially, happened. In the year 2023, all the significant and extensive developments within this crucial missile program, which were more or less thoroughly prepared or completely ready for implementation, were meticulously brought together and effectively utilized to diligently work on creating Ukraine's very own domestically produced and highly advanced ballistic missile system.
Some assumed that this referred to the Ukrainian Sapsan ballistic missile system, which the president of Ukraine mentioned last year.
Nowhere is it stated what kind of missile this is, what it will be called, or its exact specifications. It's more likely that the internal components have been modernized rather than the exterior. It's mainly the internal components. And now, all the necessary organizational and management structures have been established to actively move this project forward.
After successful testing, the Ukrainian ballistic missile tactical system is expected to go into mass production.
The optimal and most effective option would be a sophisticated missile with an impressive operational range of up to approximately precisely around 700 kilometers, and a warhead equipped with a highly advanced and reliable guidance system, ensuring exceptionally high accuracy with a substantial payload capacity of at least 200 kilograms. Of course, if it's more, that's even better.
This would allow us to deliver serious strikes against the entire military-industrial complex of the enemy.
A missile with a range of 300 kilometers and a 400-kilogram warhead, as stated in the specifications of this missile, will allow us to destroy targets at the operational tactical depth. This is also very good because, in fact, all command and control, all military logistics, all depots, they are located in this zone.
Ukraine has already made attempts to develop a ballistic missile over the past 30 years. At that time, domestic capabilities were limited by the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty.
Everyone remembers, when the Oreshnik appeared, we learned that there was a treaty on intermediate and shorter range missiles. What was it about? It stated that the countries, specifically the parties to this treaty, which are Russia and the United States, would not develop intermediate range missiles. And an intermediate range missile, meaning a ballistic missile, is one with a range from 500 to 5,500 kilometers. And when Trump, during his first term as president, learned from intelligence that the Russians were developing the RS-26 missile with a range of less than 5,500 kilometers, he broke off. He withdrew from this treaty. And then Russia also withdrew from this treaty.
A country undertakes the obligation to produce missiles with a range of no more than 500 kilometers, but only for domestic use.
If they produce them for export, then the range must not exceed 300 kilometers.
So I think that the Ukrainian development of this ballistic missile is currently within the framework of export restrictions. But I am almost certain that its range will be increased to 500 kilometers.
The Ukrainian defense industrial complex is making successful progress in developing weaponry.
I think it will be developed towards a range of 500 kilometers. Perhaps the warhead might be slightly reduced, but I believe that most likely even without reducing the warhead.
Ukraine's missile program is a strategic factor in the country's security. This is a breakthrough and a trump card for a country defending itself against Putin and his war machine. The development and production of Ukrainian missiles will allow the country to independently address the destruction of Russia's military capabilities in its aggressive war against Ukraine.
That's all for now. For more fiery news from the front, tune in to our next episode.